A family betrayal. As they arrived at Hyde Manor, the guards rushed them back inside to the same sitting room they'd spoken in before. Elias was already awake, or perhaps he'd never slept. Damocles explained what had happened. Elias waited until they were finished before shaking his head. "No!" He rose, hands clenching into fists. "You must be mistaken. Hendrix Betrayal has been more than a friend to this family. He would never do anything to hurt Hyde or Rivka. He was as much a founder of Hyde as I was." Tea and breakfast surrounded them in trays servants had brought, but they didn't touch any of it. They were too tired for food. Elias shook his head, still taking it all in. Grim deacons from Brahma, monstrous new forms of the Blight, magic that can rot whole pockets of existence. I'll believe all that before I'll believe Hendrix Betrayal would betray our family. "I heard him, Father." Damocles spoke quietly, looking down. It was the first weakness Remy had ever seen in him. "You remember all those conversations we've had? All the times he's tried to convince you Hyde would be better off under Romanian rule. He hated you for saying no, and it sounded like he thought that killing all of us was the surest way of taking Hyde for himself." Damocles kept his voice low, never meeting his father's eyes. "I wish there was any doubt." He drew some papers from his pocket. "I took these during a scuffle with the men. Some sort of financial agreement with a grim deacon named Echo." Elias accepted the pages and read. "This is his seal and signature. God, I wonder if Tegan is part of this." He sunk down with his head in his hands and didn't move again for several minutes. "Tegan?" Nightingale asked with the look of surprise to her friends. "His wife. They've been expecting a kid, I've heard." Elias glanced through the letter for a long moment. "King Balthazar will need to be informed at once," Elias finally said. "You say one of the grim deacon escaped?" "She did," Damocles said. "She fled while we fought with whatever Hendrix had become." "That grim deacon. What did you say her name was?" Elias was looking at Justice. Remy had to shake Justice a little to get her attention. "Echo," Justice muttered. She didn't look any better than she had in the mines. She hadn't exaggerated about the cost of her magic. "Yes, Echo," Elias repeated. "I might be able to find her." Justice barely spoke louder than a whisper. Even after limited use of her magic, she remained pale and drained-looking, like a sponge squeezed too dry. "If you let me leave, I mean. Your son got me out of jail, but—" "Of course. No question." Elias had no anger for Justice when he looked up again. No sign of any emotion at all. "I'll draft your formal pardon as soon as we finish here. You've done a service to Hyde. All of you have. I don't know where you plan to travel next, but at least accept my hospitality in the meantime. You all look like you could use a good meal and a clean bed." "What about your wife?" Zeke asked, his voice low. "Has her condition improved?" "No," Elias admitted, growing somber again. "And my doctors continue to insist there is no cure. But don't worry. The Blight has been tormenting Hyde for years now. I am not ignorant of its dangers. I've taken all the necessary precautions. You can sleep soundly under my roof." Nightingale wasn't so sure, but she wasn't in any place to complain. In some ways, her friends were even braver to be traveling around with her. The Malama had already used her body to fight them once. Would she have any way of stopping it if it decided to do so again? Nightingale was too tired to eat. She waved to Rook and Zeke before getting cleaned up and taking advantage of the promised bed. The Hyde estate lacked any of the obvious luxury of the Moretti mansion, or even her own family's castle. But after her ordeal, a patch of warm floor would have been luxury enough. She kept the strange white stone within reach as she slept, though she couldn't have said why. It wasn't as though she thought Justice might steal it, as helpful and cooperative as she'd already been. Maybe it was the exhaustion, but for the first time since the vault, Nightingale slept without nightmares. She woke just before dawn, and by the time she dressed, the sun was starting to rise, bathing Hyde in brilliant orange light. She enjoyed the sight for a moment, but had to heed the call of a far more pressing need, her stomach. The Hyde estate was quiet at this hour. There were few servants, and the ones she passed looked somber and reserved. None met her eyes. Her friends weren't up yet, so Nightingale set about the task of cooking breakfast herself. Once she started making noise in the kitchen, she suddenly attracted a half-dozen worried servants. One, a short girl in a subdued brown dress, bowed politely and made to take the pan out of her hand. The princess shouldn't have to concern herself with the chores. The princess enjoys cooking for herself, Nightingale insisted. If someone gives you grief about it, you can tell them I wouldn't let you cook for me. The servant was clearly uncomfortable, but she didn't object any further. Several other servants came and went, apparently amazed to see Nightingale actually doing something for herself. At least none of them tried to take the work away from her. It was nice to have something mindless to do. It helped clear her head. Justice soon joined her, watching from behind the counter. "Do you still have the artifact?" Nightingale met her eyes, then nodded. "Until you lead us to that friend of yours? The one who knows how to help me?" "Zephyr," Justice said. "Yeah, that guy." Nightingale didn't stop cooking. "I'm a little confused about why you can't help, though. Isn't there something in that book of yours about how to fight a crazy mind parasite?" Justice pulled over a tall chair and sat down, setting the book down on the counter in front of her. It fell immediately open to a random page, but no strange glow came from within this time. "There isn't much in here, honestly. It's more of a totem than a proper book. Sometimes I wonder if it's actually alive. What little text there is changes every time I look, and there's not exactly an index to look through. It tells me what it wants me to know." Nightingale leaned over to look, though she couldn't stay away from the stove for long without burning her pancakes. Most of what was written on the page was in symbols and letters, and looked like nonsense to her. Something bold at the top of the page was the only thing that caught her eye. "Buy blue cloth from the market today and give it to the man who asks," Nightingale read aloud, then went back to her cooking. "The hell kind of spell is that?" "It's not a spell." Justice closed the book, then rested both arms on it. Despite their long rest, she didn't look much better than she did yesterday. "It's a demand. I'm not entirely sure how it works or how to explain it. It feels like the book takes something from me when I use it. I can't explain what exactly, but if I don't do what it asks me to, I don't get it back." Nightingale wasn't sure how to respond to that. She didn't say anything until she'd finished with the first plate and could hear footsteps coming from upstairs. She took a deep breath, then turned to Justice, hoping to get a word in before they were interrupted. "Look, I'm sorry we pressured you into helping," Nightingale said. I know what it's like to have your freedom taken away. I wish we didn't have to do it to you." "I know. Don't worry about it, though." Justice didn't sound angry, only tired. "You're helping me get back to my friends anyway." The kitchen soon filled as the rest of the group made their way down for breakfast. They spent at least an hour eating and decompressing from their adventures. Eventually, Damocles arrived, fully dressed and as somber as any of the servants. He didn't look directly at any of them as he spoke. "I understand you plan to leave today," he asked. "We do," Rook said, "after a trip to the market. Justice tells us it will be a long journey to find her friend." Justice spoke up through a pancake in her mouth. "It's south of here, deep within the carrion swamps," she swallowed. "There are no towns between here and the sunken city of Gehenna." "Through the swamp. I hope you enjoy bugs and blisters." Damocles leaned against the wall. "I am to accompany you all until you leave Hyde. Some people may not be thrilled to see Justice walking freely through our city. If you need any other help, I can provide that as well." "What about your mom, Rivka?" Nightingale asked quietly. "Not good, but stable," Damocles said, taking a deep breath. "My father wishes to be alone with her. A messenger will find me if anything changes." "All right." Nightingale scooped up her pack near the entrance to the kitchen, slinging it onto her back. "Let's get going then. I'm already sick of being stuck inside."